Hello, you are tuning in to Surviving This Horror, which is a podcast about horror video games and horror media and why I love those so much and why I think they rock. I am Lily, I am your host. I'm also the former WIUX podcast director. Tonight I'm going to be talking about and kind of doing an analysis of the analog horror subgenre online. But it's going to be a little bit of a cop-out because I'm actually recording this for a class, so I'm cheating a little bit. So it's going to be a much shorter episode. To be honest, probably less quality compared to my other episodes. Let's get started. What is analog horror? Some of you might be familiar with the term, others may not, but analog horror is, according to Wikipedia, is defined as a subgenre of horror fiction that uses low quality graphics, a whole bunch of cryptic messaging. Usually it's more of slow burn horror, so there's not a lot of jump scares, but there can be more graphic imagery and disturbing monsters and stuff like that. And the main thing that ties this genre together is the visual styles that are very reminiscent of late 20th century TV and analog recordings and analog media. So think VHS tapes, cassette tapes, early CDs, not all the modern tech that we traditionally have today. An analysis of the analog horror genre reveals that it has a powerful role of rhetorical strategies that shape audiences' perception, emotion, and trust through what they're viewing. And through the use of false nostalgia, institutional mimicry, and fragmented storytelling, the genre can actually demonstrate how authentically it can be constructed and manipulated within a digital visual medium like YouTube videos or websites. While these techniques are super effective in creating a disturbing and immersive experience, they also raise a whole bunch of important questions about media literacy and the way audiences interpret and engage with the content that they are consuming. And I feel like the most effective way of demonstrating this is through a podcast. Well, actually, the most effective way is demonstrating it through a video essay and actually showing clips, which I will be doing, but it's a little bit of combination of both. So now that I kind of defined what analog horror is, I'm going to get more into the reason why I'm actually talking about it today. So the primary audience of not only my podcast, but of this episode specifically is digitally native horror fans, specifically those of my generation and younger generation that grew up with, like, you know, creepypastas, early internet horror, or in general just alternative consumers of media all around. It also targets a very niche audience of people who enjoy rhetorical analysis and puzzle solving online through like ARGs, or which are alternative reality games. But it's a very niche subgenre, analog horror is, and it has rapidly gained popularity online and in the public zeitgeist through very notable YouTube series. I can go on and on and on, but the two I'm going to focus on today is specifically Local 58, which is a huge pioneer and kind of grandfather of the genre, and then the Mandela Catalog, which is, if Local 58 is a grandfather, then Mandela Catalog is the poster child that everybody knows. But they both use retro aesthetics and fragmented storytelling to create a super immersive and unsettling atmosphere. However, these texts do more than just to entertain and scare people. They show rhetorical strategies that can shape the perception, emotion, and trust of how people consume medium overall. And like I kind of hinted at, I'm kind of gonna talk about the rhetorical power of false nostalgia. And what I mean by false nostalgia, what that term actually means is it's how the construction of emotional familiarity with past, let's say, pieces of media or like analog technology within the audience may not have directly experienced that. Like, for example, I was not born in the 80s, but I may feel a nostalgic connection to watching PSAs from the 80s, even though I was not the direct audience of that media. It's demonstrated in these pieces of text that I'm going to talk about, but analog horror depends and thrives off weaponizing false nostalgia, along with strategies such as institutional mimicry and simulated authenticity to not only establish credibility, but to then subvert it and guide mistrust in the audience through a classic bait and switch. While these strategies can be effective in producing fear, but they also highlight a broader cultural issue that audiences may not fully recognize how media manipulates them emotionally and how it can construct meaning and change the way they consume something online. I've had a very successful time identifying these strategies, but I also have highlighted their limited ability to reach and engage with audiences that they are targeting, whereas more digital and analog horror trends can capitalize on this because of the one-to-one engagement through those ARG interactive strategies, but also preying on that false nostalgia. Therefore, the desired outcome of this intervention is to both analyze the rhetorical mechanisms of these two pieces, Mandela Catalog and Local 58, and then present them in a format that effectively communicates the implications to a broader audience. So what I'm going to do first is I would like to show a very impactful clip from Local 58's contingency video. This is one of their most popular and widely recognized videos from the series. I'm going to show a snippet, and then I would like to dive into the rhetorical meaning and how it is impactful as a horror device. Alright, so here's my quick little short analysis. From a rhetorical perspective, this episode operates primarily through targeting pathos, as it leverages the emotional familiarity to create a sense of comfort before, disrupting that feeling and a bait and switch and subversion of expectations through more increasingly intense vocabulary used. But also at the same time, analog horror constructs a feeling of ethos through the institutional mimicry, like easily seen in the formatting and the ESA style of this video. The contingency video adopts a style of the Cold War ESA broadcast or emergency alert system, or like a PSA, public service announcement type video, and it immediately signals authority and urgency in the viewer. However, this credibility is gradually undermined as the content becomes increasingly more disturbing, illustrating a rhetorical bait and switch to destabilize the audience's trust. So I'm now going to move on to our final example of this episode through the Mandela Catalog. But analog horror frequently employs fragmented storytelling, requiring audiences to actively interpret and complete narratives, acting as almost like a community puzzle to solve the plot. And this aligns with rhetorical theories of audience participation, where the meaning is co-constructed rather than passively perceived or also kind of handed to you. It's more of a show don't tell mentality. And the Mandela Catalog does a great job of this through its disjointed media formats, such as police reports and religious broadcasts, creating a sense of logistical structure while ultimately leading to a unsettling atmosphere and conclusions that can be implemented in the overarching storyline. And this subversion of logos demonstrates how rhetorical strategies can manipulate but not only emotions, but the perceptions of logic and understanding in media consumption. Together, in both of these examples I have used, these strategies illustrate how analog horror functions more as a subgenre of horror to not only entertain, but to as a form of rhetorical commentary on media itself. By simulating authenticity and exploiting emotional connections to the past through false nostalgia, like both of these pieces of works have done, these exhibits reveal how easily trust can be discontinued and deconstructed with a single piece of digital media.